Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Retro Gamers Podcast. This is episode 357. Anthony here. And obviously, as you
Chris.
can see,
Yeah,
Larry is
Chris.
not here. Chris is
Chris
here.
is here.
Chris is here. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Chris is joining us this week from Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out, a really awesome podcast that Larry and I have had the honor and pleasure of being on a couple of times. So, Chris, thank you very much for filling in for Larry, who is clearly trying to get me back for not being available last week.
It's my pleasure. And I was stepping on your lines there. I'm always used to Dave saying I'm Dave and then kicking it over to me to say I'm Chris. So I apologize for that. But happy to be here. Happy to talk some retro games and happy to fill in for Larry.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. And uh, first off, Happy New Year. It's
Happy New Year.
2024. I didn't. I saw you not too long ago. We just recorded an episode with you guys doing that end of year trivia contest.
Yeah. And you were the victor.
Uh,
That's not a spoiler anymore. We can throw that out.
yeah, we can. I'm the victor. In fact, like I'm gonna get like a plaque or something made, so every time Larry shows up, when we do our podcast, I'm just gonna remind him.
Yes.
Um,
Fantastic.
which would be awesome. But before we get into our topic for today, which I thought was really cool, do you want to just let our listeners and people watching on YouTube right now know a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Its podcast is called Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out, as Anthony said, and it's with my best friend of life, Dave. We've known each other since elementary school, so we tend to finish each other's sentences and always pick the same answers to our own podcast question. But we do kind of a pop culture kind of nostalgia focused podcast. We'll touch on games, movies, music, whatever strikes us. So that's a little bit about our podcast, and we've been fans of the retro gamers, and it just worked out that we've been able to swap hosts and episodes back and forth a couple of times, and it's been a great, fun relationship.
Yeah, and definitely, I've definitely had fun with you guys. I think it's really cool. Your podcast, I have to say, I listen to it when I'm exercising most of the time,
Yeah.
and it's kind of just a nice, fun, light thing to do while I'm like actually trying to be serious and like exercise. It's just great to hear you guys. You can tell that you've known each other for a really long time. Like it's like right there. You sound like brothers. So it's really, really cool. And then where can they find you guys?
You can find us at two middleagedguys.com. That's two, the numeral two, middleagedguys.com. And that website will take you to everything else. It'll take you to podcast feeds, socials, some blog posts that we put on there, show notes, transcripts, all that good stuff.
All right, very cool. And of course, you talk about all things pop culture. That would include video games, right?
Absolutely.
You've been a gamer your whole life,
Yes.
which we've talked about before.
From birth, as far as I'm concerned, although probably about five was when I got the Atari 2600, and I've just never stopped.
Okay, so you didn't come out at birth with a controller.
The apocryphal story is that I did, but that's more like the John Henry was a steel driving man version of my life. So hopefully someday it'll be codified into song. I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. That'll be a good song.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we get into our topic, I wanted to ask you, Larry and I have never really come up with a de facto question to ask any of our guests when they come on. So I'm just gonna throw one at you and maybe it'll stick. Or Larry will just forget it and
All
we'll
right.
forget it and come up with something else. But since you've been playing consoles since the Atari 2600, which is also that was my first console as well. If you had to pick your favorite console of all time out of all consoles, which one is it? And briefly explain why.
It's going to be a strange answer, but my favorite console of all
Don't say
time.
Virtual Boy.
No, no, no.
You're not allowed to
No.
say Virtual Boy.
No, no, no. That's Larry's field. No, my favorite console of all time is the Game Boy Advanced SP. And
Uh,
I'm very specific about that SP because not only is Game Boy Advance library phenomenal. Now I won't say it's the best library of all time, but it's a phenomenal library. But the design of that SP I have a soft spot in my heart for it. I love it. I love the clamshell. I love how it fits in my pocket. I could take it anywhere. And then the 101 revision when it actually got the really, really nice screen that I even prefer to the mods that you can get to the GBA right now. But that SP, I love that design. There's a rumor that they're going to do another Switch revision with the clamshell. I hope it's true.
ooh.
I will be first in line for that because I just love that GBA SP so much.
Maybe that's the Switch 2 reveal that's going to be coming out.
Well, the rumor I heard, which who knows where it's from
Go
or if
for
it's
it.
substantiated, but that it'll be like the economic version of the Switch 1 once the Switch 2 comes out, and they'll do a clamshell revision. I hope that's true. It's probably was just a rumor from some GBASP nut like me. I probably started the rumor. In fact, I'm not going to claim to that, but it would be fantastic if that happened.
Right. That's kind of awesome though. I mean, well, if it does come out, then you can actually like, reveal on your show. You'd be like,
Uh,
I told you so, or I
that
started
was
it. I
that
made
was
Nintendo
me.
do it. That
Yes.
was that was all you. You called Shigeru Miyamoto up yourself directly
There's
and
got an
said,
idea for you. Yeah. He was like, "Oh, it's phenomenal. I'll take it."
"Yeah, bring back the clamshell." That's all I'm saying. Bring back the clamshell.
Well, I mean, the DS had a clamshell, the 3DS had a clamshell.
True.
It's more awkward not to have a clamshell Switch than it would be to have one.
That's a valid argument. There really is. As somebody who doesn't really play handhelds, I can't relate, unfortunately. Although I do have I did give in and buy a 3DS.
Yeah.
Um, I've yet to play it.
Really, at all?
I
You
haven't,
you
yeah,
you really need to sit down and
yeah,
play Link Between Worlds, the Zelda game for
and I
3DS.
have it. I own it.
Yes,
I
yes.
bought most of, if not all of the Zelda games on 3DS, along with um Luigi's Mansion.
Hmm.
Is it Dark Side of the Moon, the second one?
Yeah, Dark Moon, I
Dark of
think.
the Moon.
Yeah,
Dark
it's
Side of the Moon
not a
is
Pink Floyd album. Yeah.
oops. Well, you know what? Be an interesting switch if they did that.
I'd be up for that if they
Yeah.
wanted to do some kind of game like that. But give, bring your 3DS out, give Zelda 10 minutes, and you will be hooked. I guarantee it.
I'm not doubting that. I'm definitely not doubting that. My biggest issue with handhelds has always been, as Larry knows, the really, really small screen would always
Mm.
turn me off to it. I've finally started getting used to it with the Switch and my Steam Deck, but the
Yeah.
screen's not that small, you
No.
know?
Yeah, and
So,
a 3DS, even a 3DS XL is about half the size of a Steam Deck. But
yeah.
Link Between Worlds is phenomenal and the gameplay will grab you, I think.
All right. Well, then, yeah, I know. And especially because I love Link to the Past.
Yes.
So I was a huge fan of Link to the Past, one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo. So it would just be a no-brainer. Um, but I would love to find a way to play it like on my Polymega or some other system. Like, is
Yeah.
it if you can? I don't think they have it available in like the Switch library online.
No, no, I don't think it
Because
is.
if they did, I'd scoop it up.
Yeah,
I would
that would
definitely
be
scoop it up.
great. Or done something with the Wii U when they were doing the virtual console for that. But
Oh yeah.
no, it's locked to the 3DS or to nefarious means, which I won't get into.
Oh yeah. Well, no, we don't talk about those nefarious means. No, no, no. All right, cool. So let's get into our topic today. And we were we were joking before the episode started. Right before the episode started, I realized we're doing episode 357. And I said, oh, it would have made sense to do an episode just based on shooters,
Yeah.
just based off the episode. But we are not doing that, which is actually better because Larry is more well versed in shooters than I am. I am not a first person shooter game player at all. But interesting topic that we came up with today, and these are going to be games that we connect to a specific memory or moment in our childhood upbringing, past, whatever it is. I thought that would be an interesting one to go back to because Larry and I will like when we talk memories, we'll always talk about them really, really briefly in passing. It's never been like a focal point for an episode. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of just hone in on that. Like, what are some of the most impactful moments in your life that you can connect to a video game, or just like I said, like really strong memories? And Chris, since you are our guest this week, I would love it if you would go first.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to. And as I was thinking about this topic, I wanted to go a little askew. Because everybody's got those memories of Super Mario Brothers or NES games or that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I thought, I've got a really good memory and a really good connection of a more modern game, but still in that retro flavor. And that game is Kingdom Hearts. And
Ooh, okay.
we're gonna go to 2003 and my wife is pregnant with our first child, and she is so sick that she cannot get off the couch.
Oh
And
wow. Okay.
I don't know why, but my mother-in-law bought a video game for me, which she has never done before or since. And she bought
Wow.
Kingdom Hearts, which is a little bit of a random game. I mean, you've got to be, diehard Disney or diehard Final Fantasy, and then you have to know that that's what
Hmm.
Kingdom Hearts is to buy that game for somebody. So I have
Yes.
no idea why she did that, but she did. And so for months and months and months, as my wife is going through constant nausea, I'm just playing Kingdom Hearts and she's watching me. And that's how we lived our life for most of
Wow.
that pregnancy. And it helped her kind of take her mind off of it. It gave her something to watch and something to be entertained with. And this was back before YouTube. So we had
Hmm.
no way of like cheating to see the super secret Kingdom Hearts ending. We had just read that online that was a thing that happened. And I am
Okay.
proud to say that during that course of time, we completed every dumb requirement you have to do in that game, including like 100%ing it and defeating certain bosses in certain amounts of time and all this ridiculous requirement. And we earned that super secret ending ourselves,
Wow.
legit on a PS2. So I'm very proud of that. But that moment and since then, Kingdom Hearts has meant the world to us. When Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, we were, immediately purchased it and played through the whole thing. Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. I assume there'll be a
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 4. We had that weird trailer a couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
so it's just been something that's been a part of our lives ever since. And now that young child who was in my wife's belly is 20 years old and off in the world on her own now. And
Wow.
it's yeah, so it was a quite a moment in my life that Kingdom Hearts was there for.
So like when she turned like 18, like that big moment, did you give her a copy of Kingdom Hearts?
I gave her very own Keyblade. I was like, "You are the chosen one." No, that's not true.
That
Uh,
that would have been great. Mickey
it would have,
shows up and
yeah,
off she goes
yeah,
on her
exactly.
on her
Yeah, it's like
adventure.
you got to follow Donald and Goofy. I'm sorry, they're annoying, but you've got to do it. It's required. So
Wow.
no, and unfortunately, my kids never developed. I thought like Disney characters, this will be a great intro into video games, and
Absolutely.
they just kind of bounced off of it. And I will admit that when you get into Kingdom Hearts 2, that story goes just completely bonkers.
Yeah.
But the first one was very approachable, and we played the crap out of that game.
Nice. Well, don't forget also there, obviously you played those three, but then there was also like Chain of
Oh,
Memories and
so many.
there have been so many that a very, 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 very long time ago. Um, Larry and I I had brought up Kingdom Hearts, and I don't remember how I got there, but I think I was equating Kingdom Hearts to the Halloween franchise and
Hmm.
how it's segmented into all of these
Yeah.
different things, and it got really confusing. It was a very memorable moment on our podcast. Mostly because I was ranting in like double speed. I was talking so fast about it, and I couldn't even keep up with what I was saying. So but that's a really cool memory, especially with a game like Kingdom Hearts. I think that's awesome, and to tie it to your daughter's birth is really, really cool. I never got the super secret ending.
Mm,
I played Kingdom Hearts when I was younger. And oddly enough, like I own all of them.
right.
And I bought the collection, which has Chain of Memories and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but I never played anything after the first one. I played half of Chain of Memories because I
Hmm.
knew it took place between one and two. And I told myself when I finish that, I'll move on to two. And like I did with Tomb Raider, I did the same thing with Tomb Raider. I never finished Chain of Memories, so I never moved on to the rest.
Right.
But I have I think when three came out, they came out with like a whole collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what I grabbed.
It's like Kingdom Hearts 1.87 or something. I don't know, some ridiculous
There's a
title.
1.8,
Yeah.
there's like a 2.6, and
Yeah,
there
I
I
don't understand that.
yeah.
It's just something that they've done with that series. And it's if you ever did pick up Kingdom Hearts 2, man, like the first 10 hours of that game, you will not have a clue what's going on. Like they
No.
pull an almost like a Metal Gear Solid 2 thing on you,
Hmm.
to where it's like, wait a second, this has nothing to do with any of the people that I know. And then it kind of loops around and gets back to it. So they have not made that an easy series to jump into, especially if you were not there at the beginning when it was such a crazy idea that it appealed to, really hardcore RPG kind of gamers. But it's an interesting series. I don't know what's happening. Even if I read the wiki on it, I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I will play every game that they make and I'll beat up a bunch of enemies with a giant key. I'm happy to do that.
That's right. You got to beat up the Heartless, right?
Yes, that's right.
You got to beat up all of the Heartless. It's been a while since I played it, but I do remember that. But now that it's been so long, like I feel like if I go back to the series, I want to
Right.
play through the first one again,
Yeah.
just to
And if
remind
you
myself.
if you do, definitely stick with the remakes. The original PS2 version holds up pretty well in every respect except camera controls. And those camera controls are just a nightmare.
I
Which
remember
thankfully,
that.
yeah, thankfully they fixed that in the HD remakes.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, no trouble then, because I have them the PS4 versions. Yeah,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that'll be easy to go through. But what a great memory! I think that's a great memory, and probably just a little that little side note with that. But your mother-in-law buying you that game, and only ever buying you
Yeah.
that game was it? Now, did she? I'm gonna touch on this a little bit. So, did she not like the fact that you were a gamer? Was there some type of like
You
deep
know,
seed
no.
hatred about that?
There was nothing like that. It was just one of those random things. And if I remember correctly, we were out shopping, and I don't even remember what store we were at. And that side of the family was buying something, and I was just kind of hanging back waiting for them. And then they come up back over, and she hands me Kingdom Hearts. She's like, "Hey, I bought this for you. I thought you'd have fun with it." And I was like, "Wow, thanks." And it was not on, I mean, it was on my radar. I knew what the game was,
Mhm.
but when they gave me the pitch of Disney Final Fantasy, I was like, nah, I'm going to pass on that. So she handed it to me and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to try this after all. And it turned out to be just a really great thing that my wife and I really enjoyed playing and really enjoyed bonding over. And it got us through, some pretty rough times in life. So that was great. And back then we'd been married about a year by the time this happened. So we were dirt poor, and I had a PS2 that hadn't been touched in forever because I couldn't afford a single game for it.
Mhm.
And so we got
Mhm.
Kingdom Hearts, and that just kept us entertained for months and months.
Yeah. Well, it turned out to be exactly what you needed, at a time when you needed something.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
kudos to mom-in-law,
Yes.
you know. All right, that's a good one. I'm gonna switch over to a personal story that I came up now. Now we talked about this before. I always overdo myself when I actually prep for a show. Larry will say all the time he famously never preps for a show, and I believe that. But I always have like a long list of things. It's like, oh, I have all of these memories, but I'm gonna try and like fuse some of them together. Um, so I may talk about multiple games, but it'll be related to kind of like a similar memory. Because as I was making this list, I really figured out how much I equate video gaming to my dad. Because he got into video, obviously, video games were young at the time. My first console was also an Atari 2600. Um, and so as I was getting into games, because they were a new thing, my dad was surprisingly getting into them too. So, um, my one memory that sticks out to me the most is when we got the Atari 2600, because again, this was like I was probably only like maybe 5 or 6 at the time. So it was actually around the time when the industry was crashing. So, and maybe that's why we wound up getting the Atari, because it was probably cheaper at the time, because um, everything was just going out. And it was probably right before this was a little bit before, maybe a year before the Nintendo Entertainment System came out in the US. So we got an Atari 2600, and I remember very specifically that we had a small, I don't even know if it was a 19-inch TV. It was probably smaller than that. We had a small TV on a cart in the corner of our dining room, separate from the TV in the living room, which was one of those massive furniture pieces that was on the
Right.
floor, that you
Right.
put all, that mom would put all like weird stuff on top of it. It's like, here are all my little porcelain things or whatever, all the little
It
tchotchkes that you
and it
collect
probably
going
had a
on.
doily on it. Like all those had doilies.
There was a
Yes.
doily
Yeah.
going right
Yeah.
across it. Yep. With everything, and it was supposed to like make it look all fancy when it just looked weird. So we had that in the living room, but we had this small TV. I don't remember if it was black and white or color. I think it's possible it might have been black and white. But we had the small TV on a cart in the dining room, and that's where my dad hooked up the Atari. So that way it was separate from the other TV. Whoever wanted to play it can just go in there and play it, and then, whoever was watching TV would watch TV. And I'm sure his reasoning behind it was, you know, I don't want to, I want to watch football. I don't want my kids, you know, upsetting my Sundays by
Right.
playing video games, and I can't watch my football. So So I remember him hooking it up, but then what happened after that, today, today I laugh, but as a kid, it used to always drive me crazy because not only my dad, but my mom got hooked on asteroids. And it was constantly this thing where I would want to go play my Atari. I go, and there's my dad sitting there playing asteroids. And my dad got into other games too. Like he loved Missile Command. He would play Berserk all the time too. But asteroids was like the go-to game for both of my parents. So I would constantly find my mom and my dad just taking turns competing against each other in asteroids. And here I am, the kid whose Atari it was because they gave it to me, and I'm the
Right.
one like kind of sitting there waiting and trying to fight my way into playing it. And I would always get the thing that I would always tell my sisters, like, you can get the next game, you can get the next game, and the next game would never come.
Yeah.
So because they were just so competitive with it, but they were also like really enjoying it. And looking back on it now, it's like, I think very fondly of that, because it's a great memory to have. But as a kid, like, it would drive me crazy. Like, I'm sure there were a lot of tantrums on my part in that dining room because I didn't get to play my Atari.
Yeah.
And that tradition continued onto the NES with Tetris. We were a very competitive Tetris household. Like, everybody played Tetris. Like well, everybody except my younger sister. Like, my older sister played, my dad played, my mom played. We would always be playing Tetris against each other. And we had that, and that one, like my NES, I remember we had that hooked up to the main TV in the living room at that point until probably the mid 90s. Like, even when at that point I had the Super Nintendo and the Genesis up in my own room, but the NES stayed downstairs just so everybody could play Tetris. Um, and I'm happy to say that I was the one who always did the best at Tetris.
Nice.
Nobody was able to get past level 9 except for me.
Nice.
Of course, now today, I think it was like a week or two ago, some 13-year-old kid, quote
Yes.
unquote, beat Tetris.
Got to the kill screen of it or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he got to the kill screen by some. I gotta go look it up. There's some new method they figured out called like rolling in order to do like in order
Yeah.
to like play it. So I gotta go look that up now and see if I can start learning how to do that.
And then you can
But
go back and really cream your family if you get that rolling technique down.
I'll get that rolling day. I'll be like, hey guys, you want to play Tetris again? Remember like old times? And then I'm just gonna be like,
Yeah.
level 150. Take that.
So I
Uh,
wonder, that's a great story. And I wonder, did the Atari ever graduate to the big TV or did it have to be the NES that got to the big TV?
the NES got to the big
All
TV.
right.
The Atari, I feel like maybe the Atari had a moment in the sun on the big TV, but it was mostly in the dining room area away from the TV. And you know what? At the end of the day, my dad was right because, on the weekends we would be playing it all the time, and he would be very happy sitting in the living room watching football, and wrestling, which also became a thing that I got into because of him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, they were good times.
That's terrific. I love that idea of the thing that drove you crazy as a kid becomes a cherished memory as an adult. Like, that I'm sure that you were just frustrated to no end that they were playing asteroids and not letting you play, but now that becomes, something that really means a lot to you. I love stuff like that about life. I got a million of
Yeah.
those stories too.
Yeah, it is fun. It is funny. Like, as you get older, you look back on those and be like, yeah, you know what? It's actually, those were great times. I'm like, just not when you were living them.
Right.
That's all. And that's okay.
Yep,
That is
absolutely.
definitely okay. All right. So we got your Kingdom Hearts story.
Yep.
What else do you have to share?
All right, so I made that big deal about I didn't want to go back to the NES and do Mario, but my second one is Super Mario Brothers 3. So
Liar.
yeah, I totally pulled the wool over your eyes on that one. But my story with Super Mario Brothers 3 is actually how I got it, because it was my birthday and the game had been out for a while, and of course I'd seen The Wizard, which was the greatest Mario 3 commercial there ever could have been. So
Ever.
yes, I was ready for this game. I wanted to be a raccoon like you wouldn't believe. So that's what my parents knew I wanted for my birthday, and there was just no question. It was like, this has to be my birthday present. I don't want anything else. You don't have to give me multiple gifts. Just get me Super Mario Brothers 3. That's all that's
Mhm.
necessary. And so my parents, because they're wonderful, generous people, got several gifts for me, and I'm there with a group of my friends celebrating my birthday at my party, and I'm opening gifts, and oh, that's nice, it's not Mario 3, and I'm opening oh, that's wonderful, but it's not Mario 3. And then I open the last present from my parents, and it is a box that is Nintendo game sized, so I was excited. And I
Okay.
tore it open, and inside is a note with a clue written on it. And now
Uh-oh.
to this day, I can't tell you what the clue was, but it led me somewhere in my house, which revealed another clue, and that led me somewhere in my house, which revealed another clue. And then finally, I got down to the last clue, which was something like, regardless of the temperature outside or inside, when I am running, I'm always warm. And and I'm like 8 years old when Mario 3 came out or something like that. So I'm not Sherlock Holmes. I'm not great with
Right.
clues. So I'm trying to think about this the whole time. I'm passing the note to my friends. We're trying to figure it out. And then I'm pretty sure mom had to like slip it away. She's like, well, maybe you should look in the clothes dryer. So I open the door to the clothes dryer, and inside the dryer is sitting Super Mario Brothers 3.
Oh,
So I pulled it out of the dryer, and I was so excited and ripped it open, and we just my friends and I just played Super Mario Brothers 3 for the remainder of that party. And
nice.
for the remainder of that time with the NES. I mean, I was one of those kids who was always like swapping NES games, and it was like, "Ooh, I don't know what that one is. Let's trade."
Mm,
But I always had Super Mario Brothers 3. It was just a must-have for that system, which is not news to you or any of your listeners, but that the way that mom made it an event as opposed to just being like, "Oh, open a present and there it is." That sticks in my mind, and I'll combine with stories like you did, because the way I got Super Mario Brothers 2 was equally interesting, where it was the
okay.
first time I'd ever had a dental procedure, and I had a cavity and I had a
Ooh.
filling. I know it was terrible, and I my mouth was all numb, and I was just in so much pain as a child, and I was pretty sure that my face was never going to recover, and I was going to be horribly disfigured for life. And we left the dentist office, and my mom's like, "Well, I need to go to the store," and I was like, "Really, mom? You need to go to the store? Fine." And we go in, and we're in the electronics department of the store, and they have a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2 in the case.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and I was in pain, and I knew that, yeah, I can't just tell my mother I need a game anytime I needed one and it show up. But I was like, wow, Super Mario Brothers 2, there it is. And so the guy comes over and he's like, "Can I help you?" And my mother just said, I remember this to this day. My mother just says, "We're gonna need one of those games." And the guy just picked up Super Mario Brothers 2 because that's all anyone was buying when they had the
Yep.
opportunity. So she bought me Super Mario 2, and I came home and plugged it in and forgot all about the tooth pain and everything that I was experiencing, and just played the sequel of Mario Brothers. And that game is so unique in the pantheon of Mario, and we all know
Oh, yeah.
why. But to this day, it's one of my absolute favorite Marios. I love how unique it is. And I love that it's tied to that moment where my mother made me feel better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, games don't have to necessarily be like the greatest game, whether it's the gameplay or the graphics or whatever it is, if you have it tied to such a cool memory. And
Right.
that's amazing. So Super Mario Brothers 2 was your Novocaine.
It was, yeah, and it was more effective than the real Novocaine. I'll tell you that. So let that be a lesson to all parents out there.
That's right. You want to make your kids better, buy them a game. Um, and no, we don't work for the game companies.
No.
I was gonna say though, for the Super Mario 3 story, Brothers 3 story, which I absolutely love. I love the fact that your parents made you like work for it,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah,
they
there's
kind of and they let you sweat it out a little bit as if you weren't getting it.
Yes, they did that for many times. I won't go into it now, but how I got an NES was a very similar story, and so yeah, they've always been a little cheeky about that. My one of my I was looking for a gift for my mother for a holiday once, and one of my
Mhm.
friends said, "Well, is your mother crafty?" And my response was, "Not in the way you mean." So she enjoyed having a little fun with me as a kid.
That's really cool. That's a lot of fun. That's great. I love that. Such positive stories. I wish I retained more of mine, but I could safely say that my brains are like mashed potatoes. So
Mm.
and not the good kind either.
Ooh, well,
Um, but all right, very cool. Um, I'm gonna throw my next story out there. I'm trying to pick one because I have so many and I know I don't want to go into all of them. but I think I'm gonna jump over to the N64. But before I do that, I wanted to swing back on the Atari 2600 because I forgot to mention one last thing about it. That I was gonna connect to that story and I missed it. But I think it was like a year or two ago, there was an Atari 2600 like gold 50th anniversary edition. It was just like a one of those ones where they put in like 100 games in there
Hmm.
to release. But I wound up buying that for my mom for Christmas like that year because I knew how much she loved that Atari, and she was so happy, like over the moon. Like here I am buying like I'm not going to reveal her age, but obviously she's not a young woman, but just buying my mom a video game console from 40 years ago, and she was just she was so thrilled to get it. She was so excited, and of course the first question on her mind was like, is Asteroids on there? I'm like, yes, of course it's on there. I go, I wouldn't buy you an Atari without Asteroids on it.
Yep.
And she played it. She played it to no end. She also played it whenever she visits me. She plays it on my Atari 50th that I have
Yes.
for the Switch.
Yep.
So, so when she comes over, I just put. I'll throw that on for her too. I was like, "Here, Ma, entertain yourself," and just leave her to it. Um, but the second story I wanted to share, and again, it's going to be people related because we're talking memories. I'm going to jump over to the N64 because the Nintendo 64 was made for multiplayer. I mean, it had the 4 controller slots. A lot of games came out on it that were multiplayer. GoldenEye probably being the probably one of the most well-known, if not the
Oh yeah.
most well-known multiplayer game. A game I have never played too, which I always talk about
Never
proudly.
played. Yeah. Okay.
Never
All
played.
right.
First person shooters always gave me headaches, so
Mm.
I just never played them. With the exception of like one or two. Um, but on the N64, the thing with this system is that it came out just at the right time of like everything going on in my life because I think I I had just started college. Um, I was at that age where I started college. Wrestling at the time was really taking off.
Yeah.
It was WWF was starting to become super popular, and all of my friends watched, and all of my friends played games. So we were kind of like right in the pocket of both of these things. And then here comes the N64, and then here come all of these multiplayer games for it. So obviously there were a couple there were a few that I connect with most. The first ones, at least with my friends, were all of the WCW and WWF games that came out on it. So there was WCW NWO World Tour, WCW NWO Revenge, and then WWF WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy. And that was like over the span of like, I don't know, like 4 years. So like every year, there were other ones that came out on the system, but those were the four that were like the de facto, the Aki THQ games that everybody loved, and people still argue today. No Mercy is considered like the best wrestling game to ever come out, and I'll stick to that too. I still think it is. But I just remember me, Larry, and then my other friends, like lifelong friends that I had from when I was like a little kid, like my friend Anthony, my other friend Anthony Chu, who's been on this podcast. We would get together all the time and we would just play whichever one it was that came out that year, and we would just play it non-stop. It was just we were absolutely obsessed with them. And it just was our pastime for weekends. Like literally, like, Friday, Saturdays, Friday, Saturday nights, what are we doing? We're all getting together at somebody's house. Most of the time it was mine. And it would drive my mother crazy because there were always people in the house all the time. But, we were behaving. We were just playing video games till like, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Um, but what I remember the most about those days were one, my friends always loved ganging up on me when we played those games because I was always the one who won. So they loved just double, triple teaming me all the time. Um, I will admit that I am an ultra competitive person. I've softened over the years. But I will say back in the day, some controllers were
Yeah.
thrown, they did go flying. And I can also say that Nintendo 64 controllers are probably the most durable ones because they always survived they always survived my frustrations.
Yep.
But yeah, but like those are memories that like always stick with me. Especially because again, I was, probably this was from when I was like maybe 18 to like 22. So it was like right there where it's like I'm becoming an adult, but I don't want to let go of that childhood. So we're gonna hang on and play video games and watch wrestling nonstop. And that was like that was our lives through like my first couple of years of college. And it was just so much fun to still be able to share that with my friends from high school and grammar school, and it was just really cool. And then another one I have to mention on the N64, which I think was really a good memory, is the Mario Party series.
Yes.
Um, when
Still have the
Mario
scars on the palm of my hand.
Yes, same, same. When Mario Party came out, it was like I don't know. I mean, it was just this most amazing thing. I mean, it was a game we'd never seen before,
Hmm.
and it was like a board game, but it wasn't. It was like a video game, but it wasn't. It was just such a great combination at the time. And what I remember best about that one wasn't the fact that um I wouldn't always play it with my friends. I would play it with my younger sister and her
Hmm.
friends because at the time they were just in high school. Because well, they were going into high school because like my younger sister's like 5 years younger than me. So they were just getting into high school, and they would come by the house on the weekends too. My poor mother at the time, we used to have so many people in our house on the weekends that she used to lose her mind. We would, and we had a conversation about it not too long ago too, where I was like, you remember when we had like 12 people in the house like every weekend, and you would just scream at the top of your lungs, and the first thing out of her mouth, she's like, yeah, she's like, she's like, I would give anything for those days again. And I'm like,
Right.
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought we would every night you made it sound like we were causing like a coronary embolism.
Yeah, that's a parent's
But
role, though.
it is a parent's role. But I just remember like it was probably the first time I ever really like bonded with my younger sister on anything because, the age gap was there. Obviously, I'm a boy, she's a girl. There were plenty of things to get in between that. But I just remember um her friend, even when my friends would come over, like it would be just like kind of like one big group. So like even though there was that age difference, like her friends and my friends, we'd all sit around and everybody would be playing Mario Party, and we would just take turns, and we would just laugh for hours playing it. Who won, who didn't, who cheated, who didn't, even though you can't cheat. um and it's just great. Again, it's one of those things where it's like I look back on that and I'm like, I wouldn't trade those memories because they were so great.
Yeah. That's great. I have a lot of N64 memories too, and we're right in that same pocket. I mean, as I was leaving high school
Yeah.
going into college, that was N64 time. So we did the GoldenEye thing ad nauseum.
Hmm.
And then our game was WCW versus NWO, which I think was the first one, if
There
I'm
were
not
two.
mistaken.
There was World Tour and Revenge.
Oh, it was World Tour. It was World Tour.
Yeah,
That was
World
the one
Tour.
we
That
played.
was the very
Yeah.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And we got into that pretty heavy. And I have to admit I'm not a big wrestling fan, but I loved that game like crazy. And we'd play that constantly. And then the other big one that we played was Mario Kart. And we
Yes.
would do the balloon battle arena stuff.
Yep.
And
Love
I'll tell
battle
you,
mode.
man, that ruined friendships way more than GoldenEye did. We
Oh yeah.
were like so competitive with the Mario Karts, but yeah, that was a real smart move by Nintendo to put four controller ports on that. And the N64 was the first system I ever owned where I was willing to invest my own money in more controllers. Like any
Oh
other
wow.
time, it would tick me off if I was like, I have to buy another controller. That could be game money. Why am I buying a controller?
Yep.
But with the N64, I was like, oh, I gotta have four of these. This is gonna be amazing.
Yep.
And then they carried that on with the GameCube, and then other systems did it after that. But doing that at the N64 was really forward thinking of Nintendo.
Yeah, it definitely was, especially when the two consoles previously, like they would come out with the
Right.
multi-tap adapter to play four players, but then there weren't that many games that were four players. Like I
Right.
remember on the NES, like oddly, the only four-player game I ever remember playing that I owned was Nightmare on Elm Street. And
Oh,
talk
great
about
game though.
great game, but talk about a weird game to be a
Yes,
four-player game.
agreed.
It was just didn't make any sense. Two players fine. I was like,
Yeah.
before was just kind of weird. Um, but yeah, like yeah, I agree with you. Like you had to have four controllers. In fact, to this day, I still have all of my controllers for the N64. I have five of
Wow.
them. I don't know where I got the fifth one from, but I have all of them going back to the OG gray one that came with the
Yep. Yeah.
console.
Man, I've got a bunch. I don't think any of mine are the original. I think I've all
No.
had to replace since then. So that's pretty impressive that you've got all yours.
Yeah, I definitely have my OG. In fact, I have an N64 controller that I bought for my PC. So it's a USB
Oh
N64.
wow. Okay.
And I forgot why I bought it. I just saw it and I was like, oh, cool. I go, maybe I can find a way to play my N64 games on my PC. And I never did, but I just thought it was cool to have the controller.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, no, yeah, kudos to Nintendo for that. Like, I think, they've always been really smart with, that forward thinking of like, the kids that we sold the NES to are growing up, and it's like, how do we modify things to keep it going? And and lo and behold, here you go. You come out with a four-player console,
Right.
system that naturally plays four players, and then a ton of games to support it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, just really smart on their part, and it's why Nintendo to me is always like, as much as we talk about Sony and all them, Nintendo is always first and foremost. They always will be.
Yeah, I have the same opinion. And I love their ethos where it's like we're not necessarily chasing the most powerful, the most graphically intensive.
Hmm.
We're chasing what we think is fun.
Yep.
And they've certainly had some missteps through the years, but more often than not, they produce
Virtual Boy.
something more often than not, they produce something that you're like, wow, this genuinely moves the needle and progresses video games into something I didn't know I wanted, but now I can't live without.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Mario Odyssey,
Oh
Zelda Breath of
yes.
the Wild. It's like,
Yes.
they're taking the same, yeah, they're taking the same franchises that they're not. I mean, yes, they're giving them an upgrade of some kind, but it's not like, hey, now Zelda looks like Call of Duty or Zelda looks like Resident Evil. It's not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. I'll always respect them for that. And also they've kind of cornered the market on that where it's like we're just about the games and the fun and that's it. We're not worried about it being graphically amazing. And Larry and I talk about this a lot too because I was telling, I had started to tell him I go, I think I finally crossed the line where I'm too like I'm starting to feel my age when I play games and I'm like I'm not as interested in newer games
It's
because I
too
see,
real, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at them and I go, yeah, I go, it looks real. I go, but what's the gameplay like? I'm not interested in how real it looks. I want to know, is it a cool game to play?
Yeah.
So, and I more often than not don't even go for the newer games like that anymore. I look for like stuff that I actually just saved on my PS5 today. Um my friend was talking to me. He's like, "Have you heard about this game called Homebody?" I'm like, "No." And so I went to go look at it and it's like a horror survival kind of game, but it has like the graphics of it looks like a PS1 game. And
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
so like and then I read the description of it and everything. Or maybe, yeah, I guess PS1-ish. But I read the description and I'm like, this is awesome. I go, this sounds great. I go, and furthermore, I go, they're not trying to make it look like a bunch of real people
Yeah.
in a horror movie. I go, and I immediately liked it. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep an eye on this one because like that's now where I'm officially gravitating towards. I'm not really looking for what looks the best.
Yeah, and it probably does show our age, but I get that. And I
Yeah.
feel like the last big leap we had was honestly PS3, Xbox 360 era. Because
Hmm.
PS4, okay, sure it's better. PS5, sure it's better, but it's not blowing my mind better the
Hmm.
way PS3 and Xbox 360 was such a leap
Yeah.
from PS2 and Xbox. So yeah, I kind of and it drove me crazy that Sony's big marketing for the PS5 was it loads faster. I'm like, wow, that's where we are of an industry that the load
Yep.
time is the big selling point. And granted, it's phenomenal and it's amazing. And in the PS5 games I have played, yeah, they're right about that load time, but it's like, wow, we're chasing the wrong things. And Nintendo,
Hmm.
I think, chases the right things.
I agree 100%. I mean, you don't need to come up with something new. I mean, look at Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
People have been playing Grand Theft Auto 5 for a decade.
yes. Or Skyrim.
Yeah,
They keep releasing Skyrim.
Or Skyrim, which I think I might have a copy of Skyrim somewhere. And to be honest with you, I don't know it's probably on my 360.
Yeah.
that I grabbed it because I'm just like
Uh,
either 360 or Xbox One, and I've never played it, but like it just goes to show you of like how long ago this thing came out.
I think I have every Skyrim ever.
Every
So
Skyrim.
yeah. And I
Nice.
don't I won't even tell you how often I've played it. But anyway,
Oh, very or not at all.
a lot, a ton, too much.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, and when the Switch launched and they had Skyrim on that commercial, I was like, "Oh, Skyrim
Okay.
again." I was excited.
Well,
So
your Skyrim is my Dead by Daylight.
fair enough.
I put so many hours into that game, I'm ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's my social game. That's what I do. I mean, I call it my social game because I play it with friends.
Yeah.
So I try to excuse it away that way.
That counts. You're with
Yeah,
friends here. It's okay.
exactly. It's fine. It's like, support. I like my support group. All right. So, any other memories, personal stories that come to mind? Were
You
those
know,
the main ones?
those were my two big ones, and then you bringing up the N64 brought in a lot of good memories. And we
Yeah.
did very much the same thing, just having a bunch of college kids, after class getting together and just playing it until 1 o'clock in the morning. So I have those memories too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I could keep going, but eventually people are going to get tired of hearing about me, and you're going to get emails that say bring Larry back. So I'll stop with what I've got.
Oh, no, it's okay. Larry's going to come back whether or not we get emails, and I don't think we're going to anyway. Or they may say, "Hey, we like the new co-host. Let's stick with it."
Oh well,
Sorry,
I don't want to replace him either, so that's tricky.
oh well, sorry, Larry, you're out of a job. Yeah, I had other memories listed, but they were all like simpler or similar ones. I think one I'll touch on really, really briefly is just jumping up to the Xbox 360 since we talked about it. Um, and the Xbox 360 was my console of choice when I wound up moving across the country to Los Angeles in the mid 2000s or mid to late 2000s. And what I remember about it the most, because I moved to LA, I didn't know anybody there. And one of the coolest things that I got to do when I was first living there was Xbox 360 was really the first console that I started playing online
Hmm.
and online with my friends. So Larry and some of my other friends here in New York, we would go online on the weekends and we would play Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 when it came out on the 360. And
Yeah,
that was probably my only first person. I think it was a first person game. It's hard for me to remember if it was first or third. I think it was first.
I think it was
Uh,
first.
yeah, that was probably the only first person game I ever played consistently. And just I dealt with the headaches because it gave me an opportunity to stay connected to my friends here in New York, while I was just out in LA trying to do, things we do in LA.
Yeah.
And that's something I'll always I'll always fondly remember is like being able to stay connected to my friends through my video game console. Um, and thank you, Microsoft, for that.
Yeah, it is really great, and I could go on a lot about Xbox Live stories, but it really was a way to connect, and I was able to keep tabs with a lot of my friends that way too. So yeah, it really was wonderful, and there were some of my friends where it kind of killed the LAN party because it's like, oh, we could just go on Xbox Live, and I was like, you're missing something, but
Mhm.
it brought more good than it brought bad. So I'm a big fan of Xbox Live.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. Between that and my Xbox memories will always go to that and Rock Band because
Yeah.
that's how I became really close friends with my friends in LA. We bonded over Rock Band, which
Nice.
was amazing. Yeah, and we
I
played
st
that game for a good decade.
I still contend it is easier to play a real instrument than it is to play Rock Band. I will go to my grave believing that.
You know what? I might believe that. I might actually believe that, especially if you get up to that like hard and expert mode.
Oh
It's
my
like at that
goodness.
point, yeah, just give me a guitar.
Yeah.
Um, all right, cool. So this was a I thought this was a great topic and a great conversation. I think we can start wrapping this up. Before I do though, I have to ask because I didn't ask at the top of the show.
Sure.
Why the Metroid background? You must
Well,
have chosen that specifically.
I did choose it specifically, but I'll disappoint you. It was the first game that popped into my head. And I figure I've got the green screen behind me. I might as well put it to good use. And I even though I'm a massive retro collector, I don't
Mhm.
have the big displays like you and Larry have behind. So I would have been at a disadvantage with just like, oh, those are really ugly
Ah.
curtains, Chris. So you've got Metroid. And if you have me back again, we'll do something different.
All
But
right.
Metroid seemed like a good one for today.
I think that was a good call. And you know what? I think it's actually smarter on your part that you don't waste your money like Larry and I do.
Oh, no, trust me, I waste my money. I just don't display it, which is
Ah,
arguably even stupider because it's like, oh, I bought this. Here it goes into a plastic bin. Yay me.
nice. The true mark of a collector. It's like, where's your collection? Oh, in a bin somewhere.
In storage. Why? Why do you ask?
Yeah,
You'll
exactly.
never find out where it is.
Exactly. And that's where they're supposed to go. That's the art of a collector.
Oof, well,
All right. Well, Chris, this was great having you on. Once again, please let everybody know about your podcast and where they can find you.
sure. Our podcast is two middle-aged guys trying to work it all out. If you listen to us, I'm sure Larry and Anthony will appear on there again in the near future. So, good reason to check us out. You can check us out at twomiddleagedguys.com. That is two, the numeral two, middleagedguys.com. And Anthony, thank you so much for letting me fill in for Larry. It was a blast.
Oh no, trust me, the pleasure was all mine. It was really awesome speaking to you about this stuff. And then for everybody out there who watches us or listens to us, you can find us on facebook.com/the retro gamers podcast. No, that was wrong. See, Larry's not here and I get thrown off. You can find us on facebook.com/retro gamers podcast, on Instagram at retro gamers podcast, on Twitter at retro gamers pod. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube at retro gamers podcast, or you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com. Chris, one more time, thank you so much for joining me this week. Larry is going to be back next week, and we are going to get back to our game of the week. We have two of them, Star Fox 64 and Battletoads, that we're going to get back to and talk about. So if you guys have a copy of those, this would be the week to play them, and then you can hear our thoughts on that. So, and
Let me jump in and say
yeah,
Star Fox
please.
64 is the better of the two. I'm gonna give you that one.
I think that's fair. Actually, before we recorded it, I did a playthrough of Star Fox 64. Granted, I was the lowest like section I can go, like because I
Right,
don't I
right,
don't remember all the secrets, but I did
right.
play it start to finish.
That's a
Um,
fantastic game.
it's an amazing game. Absolutely love it. So if you've never played it, this is the week to play it, and you can hear about it from us next week. So we will catch you everywhere next week on the Retro Gamers Podcast.